All right. While we're waiting, we've got a couple of things going on. As you guys can probably see, we're still using VRED 2014. 2015 is out. We do want to have another webinar. We haven't scheduled it yet as to when we would do it, but we just loaded 2015 here in our office and we're starting to play around with it. So we're going to assess it first, look for the differences, the enhancements of 2015 over 2014, and then build that into another webinar. That's not been scheduled yet, but we'll let you know with a little bit of advanced warning when that's going to be available for broadcast. So we'll end the series today. This is the third of the three, and this is actually really a cool one because this is going to like bring it all together.
Some more advanced features today.
Nice. So part of the final prize for attending the event, and once again, thanks to all you guys. There's been, you know, a core group of about 15 people who've sat in on the last two and are intending, or at least plan to sit in on this one. So that's cool. So we have a little contest, and it's totally voluntary. We're looking for the best VRED image based on all of the tips and tricks that Dawn has provided over the last 3 sessions. By the end of June, submit to us an image, your best VRED image, and we'll judge who the winner is going to be, and that winner will get 2 tickets to a Tiger game, Detroit Tiger game, sometime in summer. Yeah. Which isn't great. I don't know if they're not doing great right now, but hopefully when we get you the tickets, they'll be better.
Hopefully you're not too far from Detroit.
Well, it looks like right now all the attendees are locals, which is cool. So, yeah. So 2 tickets to a Tiger game for the best image. The deadline is the end of June. Okay, so you have a good 2 weeks to take all the stuff that Dawn has put together, plus any of the other stuff that you have on VRED. And if anybody's having a problem getting an eval copy of VRED, let me know. If you've already done your 30 days and you need some more time, I can get you an extension on your temp license. So let's see. And it doesn't have to be a car, right?
Doesn't have to.
It could be anything. But we're looking for just the best, still unretouched image, just a straight VRED image.
Right.
And you can submit as many as you want too, right?
Sure, why not?
Like if you have your top 5.
Reason.
Yeah, not 1,000. But looking for the best image, kind of pulling it all together. We're keen on VRED. It's really starting to take hold. It's certainly been a much more popular product in Europe prior to Autodesk buying the technology, but now here in the States, we're seeing more and more people going to it, and we're seeing some good imagery come out of it. And we like what we saw in 2015. We haven't looked at it too closely, but there's some nice new features in there as well to just make, we think, the user interface, the process a little bit more streamlined, things like that. So you're still going to get the speed and the accuracy that you had, but I think what they focused on this time is just making it a bit easier to use.
I think that most of what I've gone over is not going to change. I think what they focused on is the simple UI, which is this button up here. And that's intended more for not the power users, but those who just want to learn the basics to get around, which probably isn't you guys. You're probably more the hardcore users, guys and girls. I'm not sure. They're on the line here.
Looks like all guys.
Okay.
So anyways, all right, so it's 1:10, and I think we should go into the heart of this thing, because this is, like I said, pulling it all together. So this will be a nice webinar, and then we'll have, you can, like same kind of process as before, pose your questions to me as we go forward. We'll try to save until the end, but if there's something that's pertinent to what Dawn is talking about now, then we'll stop and I'll ask her the question. So I'm going to pass it over to Dawn. There you go.
Thank you, Mike. Again, this is Dawn McCardle with Linkage Design. And just to recap, last time I talked about some texture-based materials and animation. And today I'd like to talk about some lighting options and rendering. Just to review the different lighting options that we talked about, there's image-based lighting, where an HDR image mapped to the dome or other surrounding geometry, acting as a light source, is one way to light your scene. Also, there are what's called object lights, and this is where we left off with the material that has incandescence and it uses light sources turned on. That turns the geometry with that material assigned to it into light sources. So in addition to those two lighting methods, there are also what is called standard lights, and this is in your light editor. By default, you have a headlight included, and the headlight is not exactly what it sounds like. You don't just toggle it on and off and your lamps are lit and ready to be rendered. The headlight is more of a flashlight that you might need to use when your scene is dim, like this one is, just to kind of be able to see around better. Normally I don't have a use for that, so I keep that off. But also within the light editor, if you right-click in this left-hand column, you can create what are called standard lights and area lights and array lights. So first I'll go over the standard lights. In photography, they might be called still lights. They're useful in interior situations which don't receive as much illumination as exteriors. I'm going to start by creating a point light, and I'm going to go to my graph editor and select that so I can transform that up a bit so you can see the icon. So here's my point light, and this light emits light in all directions. You can turn this point light into other types of light, under types. So I'm going to turn it into a directional light now. And now my light is casting light in one particular direction. And you can rotate the direction so that it will shine wherever you want it to. And also you can turn it into another standard light type, which is spotlight. And there are all kinds of attributes in the light editor here that can be adjusted, such as the cone angle, the penumbra angle, and so on, the intensity. I'm going to lift this spotlight outside of my vehicle. And another way to position your light is to go where you want in the camera. I'm going to select my vehicle and find my top view and zoom in. Now, if you go in your light editor to transform and click on Get from Camera, now the position of the light takes on that of where your camera was positioned when you press the button. So here's my spotlight up here. And you can turn the light on and off. If you don't hide it, it will render. So that would be under Visualization, Hide Light. I'm going to keep that on for now just so you can see it. I'm going to bring that closer to the car. Also, you can decrease the shadow intensity so it's not quite so hard or dark. Now these three types of standard lights are intended to be used with OpenGL. If you're going to be using ray tracing, then I would suggest you use an area light. And the spherical light, the disk light, and the rectangular light are the three types of area lights. So I'm going to change it into a disk light now. Now, like I said, they work with ray tracing, so I'm going to turn ray tracing on now. And the scale of the light is linked to the intensity. So when this finishes ray tracing, I'm going to scale it up. And right now it's at 58. I'm going to change that to, say, 300. So now that it's scaled to 300, I'm going to show you when I scale it to 4,000 that it's going to create more light and the shadow is going to become softer.
And you can always position that light, like move it in the Z direction, up and down, and things of that nature.
Yes, it has all the usual transforms. I'm going to turn this into another type of standard light, which is the rectangular. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to open a scene I created where I've created a rim lighting scenario. And in this scene, the light source is just one rectangular area light that's pretty large, and it's positioned behind the vehicle. And it's pretty easy to set up, and you get a nice silhouette effect when it's rendered. I've got ray tracing on. So that's one thing also to consider. If you keep ray tracing on when you open a new scene, you're going to have to wait a little bit extra time for that to update. I just turned it off. I'm going to wait for ray tracing to turn off. And meanwhile, I'll show you a couple of images that I created when this is rendered. So here's how it looks when it's ray traced. And here's another quarter view of the rectangular area light.
Nice. Good highlight.
I'll also talk about another type of light source, which is called array light, and I can show you where that is in a moment. It's in the same location. Here's an image. What it shows, this is a visual interpretation of the light rays that's on a lamp. This is from Autodesk. And you would use array light if you have a ray file, which is normally supplied by a lighting manufacturer. Okay, there we go. So I can move around a little more quickly. You see, this is just my vehicle and a large rectangular area light. So in addition to those types of lighting, I'm not going to go over in detail, but there is also what's called photon tracing. And that can be found under render settings and ray tracing quality and photon tracing. Now, when you turn this on, you can do indirect, which means that the light emits tiny particles of light, or caustics plus indirect. And caustics are when it calculates light photons bouncing around the environment. And if you can visualize a swimming pool indoors, and if you've ever seen how the light bounces off the water and is reflected on the walls, that's an example of caustics. Let me show you a couple of images. This is photon tracing before the numbers have been adjusted. You can see all these tiny little dots represent the particles of light bouncing around the room. And this is after the numbers have been smoothed out, and this is just like a blue glass ball. Related to photon tracing is what's called a light portal. And this is a type of material that attracts photons. The light portal material has been assigned to this strip here, and you can see how more photons are like magnetically attracted to that particular area. This is like a box that the top is slit open, so and then there's a rectangular strip above that. So that concludes what I wanted to talk about regarding different lighting options. I'm going to start to get into rendering now, and I'm going to open this scene. Talk about rendering modes. We've mostly been working in the realistic rendering mode, but there are some other options in addition to that. So here's a scene where I've got a sphere and some walls that just have different colored plastics assigned to them. And this is a chrome type of floor here. If you were to go to render, you would control these things in your render settings. Under File Output, you select the camera that's going to be looked through to do the rendering. By default, it's on perspective, but if you have viewpoints set up, you can use those, and the viewpoints do take on all the camera settings when you save them. Of course, you can tell it where to render to, and if you check on Use Timestamp, that means when you go to render, you only need to name it once, and thereafter it creates an extension that tells you the time that it was rendered. And the purpose of that is not having to rename it and your file not being overwritten. Here are a bunch of presets for the width and height, the ratio. And if you want to see a frame of what that looks like, if you want it to be framed, that would be under Window, Render Window Size. And I'm going to change it to a 16:9 ratio. Now, if you recall, in the first webinar, I talked about what interactive and still frame ray trace rendering mode means. Just as a review, interactive is the ray tracing mode that is occurring while you're tumbling around. And still frame is what is the rendering ray tracing mode when you stop navigating and the image is smoothing out, or when you write out a frame. So here under File Output, it's set to CPU rasterization right now, and I'm going to tell it to render region. All right, and that's also up here, render region. So you hit R on the keyboard, and then you select a region to render, and then you don't have to wait for the entire frame for your test. I'm going to go over the different levels, and there are 5 different levels of ray tracing that increase in quality as you go down the drop-down list, and they also increase in time. So right now it's set to CPU rasterization, and this gives you the same look that you get for OpenGL, even though you are ray tracing. So basically, the only thing you're getting is realistic lighting. This is good for heavy data sets. So right now, whatever's in this box is rendering on the mode I'm talking about. So after CPU rasterization is pre-computed illumination. So now you can see that we've got a reflection. So it's realistic lighting plus reflection. Now I would have shadows in here if I had prepared ambient occlusion. We talked about baking a shadow. I did not do that in this scene, but this pre-computed illumination would be the mode you would want to use with ambient occlusion. Next is pre-computed plus shadows. This computes shadows based on the HDRI, and it is interactive. So if I select my HDRI and rotate it, you can see that in real time it is updating. And those shadows are based on the brightest part of your HDRI image. If there's a sun in there, that's where your shadows are going to be cast from. So don't use that one with pre-calculated occlusion, ambient occlusion. Next is pre-computed plus IBL, or image-based lighting. So in addition to all of the above, this one also offers glossy reflections. This is a good mode to use with exteriors. And finally, the best of all, the highest quality and the most expensive is full global illumination. This calculates realistic lighting, shadows, reflections, refractions, glossy reflections, and also specular reflections. And this is good for exteriors. Full global illumination is the mode you would want to use with photons too. So just to review, all these 5 modes are to be used with ray tracing on. And if you're going to do a high quality image, which I'm sure you all are for our contest, you would also want to have anti-aliasing on. And if your anti-aliasing looks too grainy, here under general settings, anti-aliasing, you can increase the image samples. All right, next I'm going to talk about some visualization modes. I'm going to open a new scene. When this pops up, you'll see that I've changed the environment of the sports car that you're so familiar with. And I'm using what's called a skylight environment. The skylight environment allows you to set up specific time and location for your lighting. So if you were to create that, it would be under Materials, where you create your materials and your environment. Go to Create Environment and Skylight. So I already have one created, and you can see the attributes here. So right now, it's set. I'm going to change this to today. And it's set to 1400 hours. You can change that as well. I'm going to change that to 1. And it must be 1 in the morning because it's pretty dark. So now I'm going to change that to 7 o'clock. And also, there's a map here where you can get longitude and latitude information. So I've set it to Detroit, which is the closest city here to us in Royal Oak.
That's very good.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it looks good.
So like I mentioned before, we've been working in realistic rendering visualization most of the time. But in addition to that, there are a bunch of other ones in here. And I touched on surface analysis rendering last time when I did my motion test because it's so fast to render. This feature is included for VRED customers with Alias, so they don't have to go back and forth between programs. It analyzes surface quality by showing lines representing reflection values so that tessellation errors and surface mistakes can easily be spotted. And under rendering, surface analysis is where you can adjust some of the attributes of this. You can change the lighting direction, you can change the thickness of the stripes, and so on. Let me go back to realistic rendering. I'm going to talk about clipping and line tube. Go back to my home view. So under interaction, there is clipping, and that brings up a window. If you enable clipping, this creates a plane which clips through geometry, making one side visible and the other side invisible. And you can control, I can shift click exactly where I want that clipped, or I can even bring up a manipulator and drag it. Also, you can show some things like the grid. You can show contour. This is cool. I'm going to decrease the line width. And if you click on clone, which I just did, what happens, and you can see in your graph editor, that it creates actual maps. So I'm going to isolate this. And this becomes something that you can apply materials to and render. I'll show you an example of that in a couple images. So here is my contour with a blue material with some glow applied to it. And here's another view where I drag that clipping contour outside of the vehicle.
Nice. That looks good.
Thanks. So I'm going to delete this clipping contour, and I'm going to disable it, clipping. And next, I'm going to show you another visualization mode, which is stereo. This is for use with stereo glasses. And there are all different options in here, depending on what type of glasses you have. And also, version 2015 offers Oculus Rift, which refers to head-mounted glasses used for immersive product evaluation. I'm just going to disable stereo, and now I want to talk about backplates. A bunch of people have asked me, you know, with the dome, I can get a nice black and white gradation, but I want just a plain black or a plain black white background for product displays. And one way you can do that is through backplates. And those are under Visualization, Backplate, and then Create Backplate. I'm going to go to where I have just a plain white image and load that in. Now you can't see it yet because my dome is visible. So what I have to do now is go to the attributes for my environment and turn off is visible and turn off shadow plane visible for my environment. So there's the vehicle in plain white environment, or whatever color you choose.
But the HDRI is lighting that
Yes,
vehicle.
That's a good point. It is still lighting it. Now, if you wanted this in a backplate shot, I'm going to create another backplate. Now this time I have a desert scene, but before I load that in, I want to show that if you right-click on that in Windows and go to Properties and then Details, a lot of images you'll find carry camera information with them. This one has the type of camera that was used, f-stop, the exposure time, the focal length, and these things can be entered into your camera attributes to match it up. So I'm going to select this backplate that I've rescaled to match my image size. And it looks pretty good, but the reflections are not matching, so I'm going to change to a different environment that is more similar to the desert scene. But since I don't want to see the dome, I need to turn off is visible for it. So here I've got my vehicle in this desert, and you can position it any way you feel looks correct and render it out. I'll show you some renders I have. So here's a sports car in this desert environment. And here I've placed it on a wooded road. And here it is in a city with a city type HDR reflected on the body paint. Okay, so there's some other camera attributes I want to talk about, and one really cool thing you can do is add depth of field and motion blur. So first I need to bring up my animation timeline, because as you recall last time we animated the wheels, and I'm going to go to a frame where there is animation on them. And if I turn on motion blur, and under lens attributes, it's the shutter speed that affects the degree of motion blur. The lower the shutter speed number, like 115, the greater the effect. So here you can see there is motion blur on my wheels, and you have to have anti-aliasing on. Similarly, there is depth of field. I'm going to turn off my motion blur, and I'm going to turn on my depth of field. And you can see if you double click, wherever you double click is going to set your focus point. If I click back here, then the front will be out of focus. And if I click in the front, then the rear will be out of focus. And one thing to keep in mind is that if you exaggerate the depth of field too much, your vehicle is going to end up looking like a toy car. So here, let me show you some images where this has been rendered out. So here's a high degree of depth of field, and here's less. Sometimes just a touch is all you need, so it's not super sharp. And here's where the wheels have motion blur. And here's where the vehicle is moving, so the wheels and the vehicle have motion blur. All right. Now I'm going to open another scene and talk about render passes. render passes allow you to write out selected passes so that you can make visual adjustments in a compositing or image manipulation software. I'm going to select a region to render out in Raytracing. And I'm going to bring up my render window. So the place to find that is under File, Output, and then Render Passes. If you turn on Export Render Passes, you have a lot of different options here that you can check on. And when it renders them, it renders, all channels are created separately and saved at the same time. Now to get a preview of what each channel will look like, that's under Visualization, Render Pass Rendering, and there's a variety of in here. I'll show you a few of them. For example, Glossy IBL, and Specular Reflection, Diffuse, Diffuse IBL, and this one called Material ID. I think someone referred to that as a clown path.
Yes.
What that's doing is each material is assigned a different color. And if you go to your materials, I'm going to select this green metallic paint that is assigned to my sphere. If you go down to Raytracing and you see the Material ID tab, then each number, I'm going to just click through some different numbers. You can control what number is associated with what color. And this is used for creating masks or compositing. Okay. I want to talk about render layers. And that's under Rendering, Render Layer. Off my material editor and readjust my window size. And this is for use with Raytracing on as well. Now, Render Layers is a tool that allows you to select which geometry is visible or invisible during rendering. And this is useful for compositing also. So I have this set up, but I'm going to go and delete it so I can show you how to set it up. Go back to Realistic Rendering. And to create new layers, it's just the plus sign. So I'm going to create 3 new layers, and I'm going to rename the first one Sphere, and the second one Floor, and the third one Walls. So if you bring up the scene graph, all you have to do is dump each part into that folder. So I'm going to bring the sphere to sphere, I'm going to bring this plane to floor, and the box to walls. So now within the render layer, you've got all these options to control what is visible and what is affecting other things in the scene. So for example, for my sphere, if I turn off primary visibility, and then this check mark with the circle is what makes the action take place. So that means that my sphere is now invisible but still affects the rest of the scene. So I'm going to activate the floor, and you can see that even though the sphere is not in there, it's still creating shadow, it's still creating a reflection. So you can turn off cast shadows. You can turn off visible and reflection, and it's as if it's not there. And to reset that layer, it's this arrow pointing to the left here. Or if you didn't want a shadow on the floor, you could just turn off receive shadows for your floor. So there's a whole combination of things you can do depending on what you need. I'd like to show the simplicity of my topics I'm going over with these simple spheres, just so you get an understanding of the very basics. but I'm also going to go and bring in a scene where that is set up with a vehicle. So in this scene, I have created layers for the wheels, for the exterior, and for the door. And I'll show you by turning things on and off how you can choose what renders. I'm going to turn on Raytracing. Give that a moment to update. So I'm going to turn my exterior visibility off, and I'm going to activate my wheels. So this is a way where you could just render your wheels and nothing else. I'm going to turn that visibility for exterior back in, and this time I'm going to turn off visible and alpha off, and that reactivate my wheels. Now the wheels are punched out, so whatever would be occluded by the vehicle is created this way so that you could have a mask for compositing. Mm. Let me reset these things. This time I'm going to turn my door off, make it invisible. Okay, so that concludes what I wanted to talk about regarding rendering. And if we have some more time, then I will continue with some of the variants that we were starting. Before we created a variant that changed between the different paint colors, but I can show you some other variants. I'm going to open my trusty HyperRod scene here, where I have most of this set up already. I'm going to show you how to create what's called a geometry switch. And this is very useful if you have different variations of math, such as different wheel models, different lamps, different IPs. And then I'm going to show you how you can, instead of using a keyboard shortcut to click to activate that variant, you could click on part of the geometry to make that happen. There it is. Okay, I'm going to go back to dynamic resolution and bring up my scene graph. So first, I want to show you, I've created this, what's called a switch node. And to create that, you can right-click anywhere in the scene graph and go to Create Switch. So I've created a switch, and it's like a folder into which you can drag your different math options. So here I've got this wheel, and I'm clicking the X to make each visible, a second wheel option, and a third wheel option. So to turn that into variant, you need to bring up VSet, and you need to be in the Geometry tab. So over here, you always want to create a group, new group, and then a new set. So within your set is where you want to drag the switch rims. And then when you click on it, a little arrow pops up. And I'm going to say next loop, which is just going to loop it through as many options as there are. You could set up individual shortcuts for each of the different math if you wanted to. And then under General, I've already got a hotkey set for 4. So now, if I hit 4 on my keyboard, I'm going to go full screen, you can see my wheels, my driver wheel is changing. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now to take that to the next level, you can go to Interaction and bring up your touch sensor window. First, you need to decide what geometry is going to activate this happening. So I'm going to say I want to click on this tire here. And that's going to, every time I click on it, it's going to show a different wheel variant. All you have to do is find that geometry in your scene graph, drag it into touch sensor, and then find your wheel variant set and drag that right on top. There we go. Okay, so now turn off wireframe and go full screen. So now, when I click on my tire, let's see what went wrong here. There it goes. Okay. I'm just too fast. Okay. Go back to my tire. And when you're doing presentation, just click on this tire. There it goes. Okay, so it is switching between the different options. Okay. So there are a couple of other kind of variants. In my camera editor, I've set up a bunch of different viewpoints. So if you just double click on them, it goes to those different viewpoints. So if you want to set that up so as a variant, then you open your VSet, and this would be a view type of variant. And I've got a new group already created. Now I'm going to create a new set, and I'm going to name this window view. And then I'm just going to drag my window viewpoint here. And while I'm here, I'm going to create another new set, and this one I'll call rear quarter. And here, I will drag my rear quarter viewpoint. And for each, I'm going to set a keyboard. So for window, I'm going to say when I click on Z, it will go to that viewpoint. And for the rear quarter, I'll say that one happens with X. So now, when I go full screen and I click on Z, it's going to go to this viewpoint and then X. And of course, you can set up as many viewpoints as you want as variants. Okay, and lastly, you can also set up a variant for your environment. So in my materials, I have what's called an environment switch. And to create that, it would just be under Create Convert, Create Environment, Environment Switch. And that's where you would drag all your different environments. So you can see I've got a bunch of them here. And to turn that change that into a variant, I'm going to go to VSet, and this one would be a material variant. So I've got switch environment, got the new group, the new set. So into here is where I would drag my switch environment. Again, click on Next Loop, set a hotkey. I've got one set for 3. Now, you go full screen, and I'm going to hit 3 on my keyboard. It takes a moment, but it should load up the next environment. I'm not going full screen. I don't know why it's so slow. There it goes. It's happening. It's just a little slow today. Okay, so that is everything I wanted to show you for some of the more advanced features in VRED.
That's excellent. Thank you.
And just a reminder that I do teach VRED here at Linkage Design, and we also offer beginning and advanced classes for Alias too.
Yeah, that's true. Good point. So, all right, so we've got a couple questions, and I'll just kind of zip through them here, and if anybody has any other questions they want to pose. So one of the questions is time travel allowed through the light portal?
Is that a joke?
It's a joke. Of course it is.
Yeah, that's how I get home every night.
So that's one of the advantages of VRED is you can do time travel through the light portal.
second question that I have is, can you get backplates and HDRIs as sets? Can you buy them as sets?
You probably can. I haven't looked into it. Someone on the LinkedIn just posted a bunch of free ones yesterday that he put together.
But sets or just?
Yes.
Oh, that's
it
good.
is a set. I haven't had time to look into it, but I'm sure it's out there.
Can you just clarify the LinkedIn you're talking about? You're talking about the VRED group, right?
Yes, I'm sorry, the VRED user group.
Yeah, so if you want, we can also include that in the summary here to give you the link for the VRED user group via LinkedIn. It's a good place to share information, right?
It is.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a forum, and questions are posed, and points are made, and things like that. So I think it's growing as well. I think you were one of the first ones on.
Well, there are a lot of more advanced questions. I can tell the users on there have a lot of experience.
Yeah.
It's a good place to look up the archives, too.
It's an international site, so there's a lot of European users on there as well, in that group.
Right.
So it's a good way to share information. So that's cool, and I think models can be shared and things like that. So, cool. So I don't see any other questions here. We've got 5 minutes till the session ends. I'm just going to drag it out a little bit longer and see if anybody else has any questions. But once again, I want to remind you of a couple things. The session's recorded. We're going to edit it, so it will be available on our Dropbox, and we'll give you the link for that probably sometime, early to mid next week. We plan a 2015, VRED 2015 update webinar. We just don't know when yet, but we'll let everybody know. And I think that will be good because it'll kind of talk about the new user interface stuff. And then we also want to mention again the contest. And it can be any VRED image. You can submit as many as you want by the end of June. And we'll look for the winner, and that winner will win 2 tickets to a Tigers game. Okay? So, any last things?
No, I hope that you all have learned something, and I appreciate you tuning in to us here. So,
yes,
keep
absolutely.
in touch, and feel free to contact me if you want to interact about any questions regarding VRED. I'll try to help you through them.
Yeah, that's cool. Once again, she's Dawn at linkage-d.com. I am mcheck@linkage-d.com, and then Rita here in the office as well can handle things like getting you temp licenses and things like that. And then her email is rita@linkage-d.com. So, anyways, there you go. Thank you so much for joining us, and look for the the update stuff coming to you next week. All right, very good.
Okay, goodbye.
Thanks so much.